Last night, the family of the person you love spent the entire night talking about you. Find out what they said. My beloved child, last night, while the world was asleep, something happened that almost no one knows. The family of the person you love stayed awake far longer than usual, and your name unexpectedly became the center of a conversation no one planned to have. At first, it was only a simple question, then another voice joined in, and suddenly everyone had something to say. One person quietly admitted, "There is something different about this person." The room fell silent. That silence carried more meaning than words ever could. Don't skip. Because what happened after that changed the entire direction of the conversation, and something huge is waiting for you. Then, without warning, someone who had been listening quietly spoke with complete confidence. They didn't ask about your appearance or your past. Instead, they wanted to know what kind of heart you carry when no one is watching. That unexpected question made everyone stop and think. One family member smiled gently, another looked surprised, and someone whispered that they had noticed small things about you long before anyone else did. But just when it seemed the discussion was coming to an end, a single sentence was spoken that made every face in the room change. No one expected those words, and for a few moments, nobody replied. Stay till the end, because the next revelation is even more surprising. As the night grew quieter, the conversation became more serious than anyone imagined. The person you love listened carefully as every opinion filled the room, but there was one final statement that remained hidden until the very last moment. That statement carried hope, emotion, and a question that still hasn't been answered. It wasn't a promise, it wasn't a decision. It was something much more unexpected, and once you hear it, everything will begin to make sense. The next part reveals the exact moment when one family member finally said the words that nobody else had the courage to say, and that is where this story takes a completely unexpected turn. A quiet voice finally broke the silence, and everyone in the room turned toward the oldest member of the family. No one interrupted, because they knew these words carried weight. With a calm expression, they said, "Sometimes the right person arrives quietly, and we don't recognize their value until they become impossible to ignore." The room became completely still. Even the person you love lowered their eyes for a moment, as if those words had touched a place deep inside their heart. Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you. Another family member leaned forward and asked the question no one had dared to ask before. If this connection is truly special, why does it feel so different from everything we've seen? No one answered immediately. Instead, they exchanged thoughtful glances, as if every memory about you was being replayed in their minds. Then someone slowly smiled and said, "Because some people bring peace without making noise." Those simple words changed the atmosphere completely. The person you love couldn't hide the emotion on their face anymore, but what happened in the very next moment surprised everyone. Just when it seemed the conversation had reached its end, someone stood up and quietly revealed a detail that had been hidden all along. The room fell silent once again, but this silence felt different. It was filled with curiosity instead of uncertainty. Every eye turned toward the person who had spoken, waiting to hear the rest of the story. Stay till the end, because the next words became the biggest turning point of the entire night, and once they were spoken, nothing about that conversation remained the same. Just when everyone thought there was nothing left to say, one family member quietly looked at the person you love and asked, "Have you ever noticed how your face changes whenever their name is mentioned?" The question came so unexpectedly that no one spoke for several seconds. Then, with a gentle smile, someone nodded and admitted they had noticed it too. The room filled with quiet whispers, not because anyone was arguing, but because every memory about you suddenly started connecting like pieces of a puzzle. Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you. The person you love took a slow breath before finally speaking. They didn't give a long explanation. Instead, they shared a simple truth that surprised everyone. There is something about them that brings peace, even when they're not here. Those words changed the entire atmosphere. A family member who had been silent all night looked directly at them and said, "That kind of feeling doesn't appear by accident." No one could disagree. For the first time that night, every person in the room seemed to be thinking about the same thing. Stay till the end, because the conversation was only getting deeper. Then came the moment no one expected. Someone quietly reached for an old photograph resting on a nearby table and smiled as if they had just remembered something important. They didn't explain why they picked it up. Instead, they looked at the person you love and said, "Before any decision is made, there is one last thing everyone here deserves to hear." The room became completely silent again. Every heartbeat seemed louder than before. Whatever was about to be revealed next had the power to change the entire meaning of the night's conversation, and that unforgettable revelation begins in the next part. Then, without anyone expecting it, the oldest family member slowly stood up and said, "Before this night ends, there is one truth that must be spoken." Every conversation stopped. Every eye turned toward them. They looked at the person you love and quietly asked, "When you imagine your happiest future, whose face appears first?" No one breathed a word. The silence itself felt like an answer. Don't skip. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. The person you love didn't answer immediately. Instead, a gentle smile appeared that no one could ignore. One family member noticed it and softly said, "That smile tells us more than words ever could." Another nodded in agreement, remembering moments that suddenly made perfect sense. The room no longer felt filled with questions. It felt filled with understanding. Yet one final opinion had not been shared, and everyone knew that voice could change everything. As that person slowly began to speak, the entire room leaned in to listen. The final words were calm but unforgettable. Some people enter your life for a season, but others leave a mark on your heart forever. We believe this story isn't finished yet. Those words echoed. Out of nowhere, another voice quietly spoke. "There is something I never told anyone." The room instantly fell silent again. Every face turned toward the speaker, waiting for the secret that had been hidden until this very moment. After a long pause, they finally said, "A few days ago, I saw the person you love staring into the distance with a smile, and when I asked what they were thinking about, they didn't answer. They simply whispered one name. No one asked whose name it was, because deep inside, everyone already felt they knew. Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you." The atmosphere changed completely. One family member slowly nodded and admitted, "That explains everything we've been noticing." Another added, "Some feelings become visible long before they're spoken." The person you love remained completely quiet, but their silence said more than 100 conversations ever could. No one tried to pressure them. Instead, the family began sharing small moments they had each witnessed. Moments that seemed ordinary at the time but now carried an entirely different meaning. Stay till the end, because the biggest realization had not yet been revealed. Then the youngest member of the family quietly stood up and said, "There's one final detail that everyone has overlooked." Every eye turned toward them. They took a deep breath before continuing, "If you connect every moment we've talked about tonight, they all point toward the same conclusion." The room froze once again. No one interrupted. No one looked away. What they were about to explain next would become the most unforgettable part of the entire night's conversation, and that revelation begins in the next part. The youngest voice finally continued. "Every story we've shared tonight leads to the same place." The room became so quiet that even the smallest sound seemed louder than before. One by one, each family member remembered a different moment involving you. Alone, those moments seemed ordinary. Together, they formed a picture no one had expected to see. The person you love listened without saying a single word, but their expression revealed more than any explanation ever could. Don't skip. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. Then someone gently asked, "What if this isn't just a passing chapter? What if it's the beginning of something much greater?" No one answered immediately. Instead, thoughtful smiles spread across the room. One family member quietly admitted, "I've been waiting for someone else to say those exact words." Another agreed, explaining that every conversation about you always ended the same way, with hope instead of doubt. The person you love lowered their head for a moment, as if protecting a feeling that had grown stronger with every passing day. Just when everyone believed the night had finally reached its conclusion, a soft knock interrupted the silence. Every eye turned toward the door. No one had expected anyone to arrive at such a late hour. As the door slowly opened, the visitor stepped inside with a calm expression and said, "I didn't come here by accident. I came because there's one important truth that everyone in this room needs to hear." The entire family froze. Whatever was about to be revealed next would become the most unforgettable moment of the entire night, and it begins in the next part. The mysterious visitor stepped into the room. And instead of speaking immediately, they looked at every face one by one. The silence grew heavier with every passing second. Finally, they smiled gently and said, "I wasn't here to change anyone's mind. I came because I have seen something all of you have missed." The room became completely still. Even the person you love looked up with surprise, wondering what could possibly be so important. Don't skip. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. The visitor continued, "People often search for grand signs, but the strongest truth is usually hidden inside the smallest moments." Then they began describing little details that no one had noticed before, quiet smiles, thoughtful pauses, and the way the person you love seemed happier whenever your name naturally came into a conversation. One family member slowly whispered, "How did we overlook something so obvious?" Another nodded, realizing those tiny moments had been appearing again and again. Suddenly, the entire room started seeing the story from a completely different perspective. Just as everyone believed the mystery had finally been solved, the visitor reached into their pocket and carefully unfolded a small piece of paper. They placed it on the table without saying a word. Every eye fixed on it, but no one dared to open it first. After a long pause, the visitor quietly said, "Everything we've discussed tonight leads to what is written here." The person you love slowly reached toward the paper with trembling hands, and the moment they began to unfold it, every heartbeat in the room seemed to stop. What was written inside would leave everyone speechless, and that unbelievable revelation begins in the next part. With everyone watching in complete silence, the person you love slowly unfolded the paper. Their eyes moved across the first line, and within seconds, their expression completely changed. No one in the room could understand why. They read it again, this time even more carefully. A long silence followed before they quietly whispered, "I never thought anyone else noticed this." The family looked at each other in confusion, waiting for the words that had caused such a powerful reaction. "Don't skip. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you." The visitor finally spoke. "That paper doesn't contain a prediction. It contains an observation." The room became even quieter. "It says that every time your future is discussed, one name keeps returning, no matter who starts the conversation." Those words sent a wave of surprise across the room. One family member admitted they had been thinking the same thing for weeks but had never spoken about it. Another smiled softly and said, "Maybe some answers reveal themselves only when everyone is ready to hear them." The person you love remained silent, holding the paper close as though it had unlocked a truth they had been carrying inside for a long time. Then, just as the night seemed ready to end, the visitor gently pointed toward the window and said, "There is still one final piece missing." Everyone turned at once, wondering what could possibly be left unsaid. The visitor took a slow breath and added, "What happened before this conversation began is the real reason all of you gathered here tonight." Every heartbeat seemed to pause. The family exchanged astonished glances, realizing they had been focusing on the wrong mystery from the very beginning. What truly brought everyone together that night is about to be revealed, and it will change everything in the next part. Before anyone could ask another question, the visitor slowly walked toward the window and quietly said, "This conversation didn't begin tonight. It began much earlier, with a single moment that none of you realized would matter." Every person in the room looked at one another, searching their memories. Then the visitor continued, "Someone here noticed a change long before the rest of you did, but they kept it to themselves." The room froze. Even the person you love looked completely surprised. "Don't skip. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you." One family member finally took a deep breath and admitted, "Yes. I noticed it first." Everyone turned toward them. It wasn't a conversation or a message that caught my attention. It was the way they smiled whenever your name appeared. It was different, quieter, but more genuine than anything I had seen before. Those words filled the room with emotion. No one laughed. No one interrupted. For the first time that night, every piece of the story seemed to fit together perfectly. The person you love gently closed their eyes, realizing that what they had tried to hide had been visible all along. Then, just as the night seemed ready to come to a peaceful end, another unexpected voice came from the corner of the room. "Wait," they said softly. "There is still one truth that no one has mentioned." Instantly, every face turned toward them. The visitor smiled, as if they had been waiting for this exact moment. The next words would answer the biggest question of the entire night and reveal why this conversation was never just about the past, it was quietly pointing toward the future all along. The final voice rose from the corner of the room, and every conversation stopped once again. They looked around slowly before saying, "You've all been asking what they think about this person, but no one has asked the most important question." The room grew completely silent. Even the visitor stepped back without saying a word. Then came the question that changed everything. What if this story isn't about proving someone's worth, but about recognizing what has been there from the very beginning? No one answered. Every heart in the room seemed to pause at the same moment. Don't skip. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. The person you love finally lifted their head. For the first time that entire night, they spoke without hesitation. "I've spent so much time wondering what everyone else would think, that I almost forgot what my own heart had been telling me." Those simple words filled the room with a quiet sense of peace. One family member smiled with relief, while another whispered, "Sometimes the longest journey is simply finding the courage to be honest with yourself." The visitor nodded, as though this was the answer they had been waiting to hear all along. Just when everyone believed the night's greatest mystery had been solved, the oldest family member slowly reached for a small wooden box resting on a nearby shelf. They carefully placed it in the center of the room and said, "There is one last memory inside this box, and after it's opened, nothing about tonight will ever be remembered the same way." Every eye locked onto the box. No one moved. No one spoke. Whatever had been protected inside for so long was about to reveal the final missing piece of this unforgettable story, and that astonishing moment begins in the next part. With trembling hands, the wooden box was finally opened, but inside, there was no expensive treasure, no mysterious object, and no dramatic surprise. There was only a carefully folded note that looked as though it had been protected for a very long time. The oldest family member unfolded it slowly, smiled, and quietly said, "This was written long before tonight, and somehow, every conversation we've had has led us back to these words." The room became completely silent. Even the visitor lowered their head with respect. Don't skip. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. The note contained only one simple message: the people who bring genuine peace into your life are rare. When you recognize one, don't let fear speak louder than your heart. No one spoke after hearing those words. The person you love closed their eyes for a moment, as if they had finally understood something they had been searching for all along. One family member softly whispered, "Maybe this was the answer we were looking for from the very beginning." Another nodded in agreement, realizing that the entire night's conversation had pointed toward this single truth. Just when everyone believed there was nothing left to uncover, the visitor quietly smiled and said, "There is still one final chapter you haven't heard." Every face turned toward them again. What happened after everyone left this room is the part that changes everything. The person you love looked up in surprise, because they knew exactly what the visitor was talking about. Whatever happened after the family conversation ended remained a secret until now. And that unforgettable moment is finally revealed in the next part. Long after everyone had gone to sleep, the lights in the house were finally turned off, but one room remained awake. The person you love sat alone, holding the folded note in complete silence. They read those words again and again, not because they had forgotten them, but because each time they did, the meaning felt even deeper. They looked out into the quiet night and softly whispered, "Now I understand why this conversation had to happen. Don't skip. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you." A few moments later, something unexpected happened. A family member gently knocked on the door and stepped inside. They didn't come to ask questions or give advice. They simply smiled and said, "Tonight, I saw something I haven't seen in a very long time, peace." Those words touched the person you love more than anyone realized. They folded the note carefully, placed it close to their heart, and quietly replied, "Some answers don't arrive with loud voices. They arrive when the heart is finally ready."